Hello everyone. Welcome to join the fourth week for the application development course. My name is Dee, and I think I've met all of you maybe in the last semester. So in this semester we are continue with our course in the application. Today we are going to learn for these 2 weeks, we are going to learn how to connect our Java application to the backend database. There will be 2 sessions from this week and next week. For this week, we'll talk about the basic idea. How do we connect our Java application to the database using the most fundamental technology is called JDBC. And next week, we are going to introduce some popular frameworks that maybe can improve your development efficiencies and broaden your mind. But let's start with the basic ones. And so, where are we? You have spent 3 weeks on learning the basic idea of web technologies and web application development. So I guess you shouldn't be so confused with those terms on this slide. We have a server and we have a client and a browser. So now people have generally two not very different, but 2 different ideas of how to build a web application using Java, of course. And I think you have met maybe all of these on our mobile applications from Android, from Apple, from Microsoft as well. And those apps we are using on the smartphone are connecting with a backend server. This is called a client-server architecture. And more traditionally, before the time of the mobile applications, probably all of you are not very familiar with those time anymore, but the browser we use more often to connect with the server. And based on different browsers, i.e. Firefox and different ones, we can also connect to the server. So in general, which one do you prefer? Think about it. Now I think it's more convenient to use the client and using the mobile applications. But browser, when we were checking the news, when we are buying the products, we can also use the browser. So both are popular architectures that we use to connect the web. Those are all called front end, and they are all connected with the back end, the server side. And now most of the companies or most of the service providers, and they provide both front end types. For instance, client, you can install their app, and you can also visit their website through the browser. But they can synchronize your own information from the server side, right? Because if you use the same username and password, and then from the server side, they can recognize you as the same user. So they will synchronize your history of browsing, and for instance, on the purchase website, what you have bought before, when you check on the app or when you check on the browser, they are the same. So this is quite convenient, right? And so, at least to all of us. However, as a professional web programmer, have you thought about what's the difference? Have you experienced the difference between the two? Maybe one I can say is that usually for those apps, there's a lot of notifications and to let you update your app version. However, these on the browser side, from the service provider, this is less required. So you just type in the URL and then you can get the results. You don't have to get the update of their website, right? So from this perspective, the BS architecture, the browser server, is actually should have a better user experience. And also the browser server architecture, it can help that the development or the application you developed is easily to transform between different platforms. However, from the client side, if you are developing the app for instance, iOS and or for Android, and you will see the difference. I think next semester you are going to have a new course for mobile application, and then you will see the difference. So many app developers now, they are also develop in order to improve the transformation ability between different platforms, they also try to build their application based on the architecture of the browser. So what you can see is an app, but the behind that app is a browser based application. So that's why we first begin in this semester with a browser server application. Well, I think the web development is quite a dynamic technology, and there are so many aspects, there are so many concrete technologies, framework, libraries, packages you can use, and many popular tools that they are updating every day. And for instance, this is I am updating my own knowledge with you together, so we are learning this course together. I have to admit, I have to check, or I have to learn the online courses all the time, each time when I'm teaching this section. So this is what we were using last year for the basic structure for the BS, or for the browser server framework, and all of those technology that are related. The blue ones are for the server side, and the orange one is for the front end, and the green one is for communications, or the data format that can be exchanged. And those technology I checked a few months ago is already outdated. Many are not popular anymore. And so this is what I have checked in the current version that are in some of the big internet companies, and they have updated their web application framework. And so on the front end, and but the HTTP side is quite stable, so to send a request and send back response. So I think this you have learned in the week 2. And this should be this is stable, so you can get familiar with that. And all of those business logics on the server side, because the service people ask from the service provider, from the server, are becoming more and more complex, and the users are become more and more, and which makes to service providers or the companies, and their business logic is getting more complex. And in order to make it easier for the developers, and so there are many new frameworks that you can use. For instance, the Spring Boot you have been using for 3 weeks. And this is a popular framework that has encapsulated many functions from the server. Actually, I think it's a good idea to use the framework. But I hope all of you that if you plan to become a professional web developer, and you could get a chance to know the details and the source code of those frameworks as well. And I hope that later on, if you want to be a very professional one, and you will get in touch with those frameworks and source code one day or another. However, the other stable thing on the server side is the connection between the business logic to the backend database. Last semester, we have talked about the database, and the database technology. The DBMS is updating all the time as well, and also the connections between the database and the web application on the server side. So there are many frameworks because they have been used almost for all the applications. So those there are quite many functions to build the connections between the web applications and the database, and they are used for all the applications. So many functions can be reused and well encapsulated on different levels, and on the framework is a high level encapsulation. However, on the fundamental logic or on the fundamental function, they are always the same. How to make it updated is always how to encapsulate those functions. And those basic functions, how to talk to different database, is called JDBC. So this part we are going to learn today. Why we need the things about why we have to learn on the web technology or on the application development course to learn how to connect with the database. Because all the applications or all the web applications, in order to, unless you want to just show a static web page, that is, you can write everything on your front end and just show to the customer. But as long as you want this web page to be dynamic, it can create some interactions with the users. And then normally you have to talk to the database. For instance, if I visit a web page, I want to click on like, or I want to comment, or even more complex, that's the final project you are going to do. I want to purchase something. So I want to check what's in my cart, what's in my order, what products is in my order. Those things you always have to talk with the database. So, actually we start the JDBC by talking about the data persistence. What is data persistence? It means that when we were developing a Java program, in the process is going to generate a lot of data. you are good at Java programming, so you know that we are using set, list, map, different data types that we use in Java to generate many data in the process. However, some of the process data, we want to keep them for further use and not make them just in the process, and so when the process ended and those data has been eliminated, they disappear. Or even when I suddenly lost the power, the energy for the machine, and all the data is lost. If we don't want to let that happen, we want the data to be kept or outlives the process that created. We want to store the data. And regular process data are stored in the RAM, and those data will be lost when you power off or when your process is ended. However, the data persistence process is trying to make the data stored is either in the local or in remote. In local, we can have some files, database, or other format to store the data. And also those files and database or other format can be stored remotely in a distributed environment or in the cloud. There are many choices actually. Last semester we talked a lot about the database, but when we introduced, we also said that the data can also stored like in files. This is happening as well currently. I know when you really have some simple applications, for instance, experiment, you can also store your data in the files. The common used data format as files, for instance, like JSON you have seen, and XML files or Excel files, or CSV files. The CSV files are widely used for data processing. So if you join my course for data processing, we are going to handle that files as well. However, more commonly, especially for industrial use, the database is more commonly used for data persistence. We have spent a whole semester learning the database technologies, and hopefully now you can list 3 advantages that why we want to choose the database for data persistence. Well, for instance, it's well structured, and it can realize more complex query, for instance, multi-table join, and also the database can provide the integrity check to make sure that the data are higher quality, for instance, right? So actually the database has a lot of advantages. That's why it's commonly used. And so we are writing Java applications in the web environment, and it's an important function to connect to the database. There are 2 directions actually. One is that our generated data from the Java process can be stored to the database, to the persistence. And at the same time, the Java process can also call or can also query the data or get the data from the database to process. So actually, this is when you are writing a program or when you are using the Java application, this is 2 directions. Well, how to realize the data storage using Java? We can first, or the fundamental level is using JDBC. But after people think that if for every application we have to write every functions, how to insert data, how to delete data, how to update data, how to query the data, write everything individually, and it becomes very complex, and many things we can package and we can encapsulate. And so so after people have more or other higher level frameworks that you can use in Java especially. And for instance, using JDO, the Java Data Object, and all of them, many of you have written an essay in last semester to discuss or investigate that the relationship between the objects and the relational data models. And so here is because Java is an object-oriented programming language. So what it's dealing with is our objects, and our database have data in relational data models. So this mapping is named ORM. But since database is broadly used, Java is broadly used, so the ORM is broadly used. And so which have generated many encapsulated frameworks for those functions. For instance, like Hibernate, MyBadis, those are like popular 5 to 7 years ago. Almost all the big internet companies, they are using those frameworks. And also TopLink, less common. And but now, because both the Java applications and the database is become they receive more and higher requirements. So, and also from the developers, they want to use they want to improve their development process. So they have better frameworks. In Spring Boot is highly related with JPA. It's a very powerful tool that we are going to introduce next week. So, but we start by the fundamental JDBC. It is the foundation of the to connect to the database with Java, and all the others, JDO, Hibernate, MyBadis, TopLink, JPA, they are using a better way to encapsulate the functions of JDBC. So what is JDBC? Literally, it means the Java Database Connectivity, so JDBC. It is a set of unified application programming interfaces. So JDBC is a set of APIs for Java. And in the JDBC, it defines how to access to a database. And the JDBC is independent from various DBMS. We have used SQLite, and some of you have used Postgres as the DBMS last semester. So when you are developing a project, for instance, when you are designing a library, and when you implement, and you can see the difference. Well, the SQL is the same, but how to we were talking about this, the SQL, it's every company just are using a subset of the SQL standard. So actually, different DBMS have their unique way of using their database, and because they are from different companies, they have their own profits to think about. There are some free ones, for instance, the SQLite we were using, or MySQL. MySQL and Oracle, and even Java, and now they belong to Oracle company. And SQL Server is from Microsoft, and DB2 is from IBM. So different DBMS, and when they are talking to the Java applications, the same function, they might have different way of use. For instance, if I want to insert a value to an existing table, in MySQL, probably I use add. I can use add. If I'm Oracle, I can define another method called insert. Insert. Or maybe in DB2 you can use put, or they define as put. So this could be various. But as a Java developer, if you want to talk to different DBMS, each time you have to rewrite your whole application. This would be so annoying, right? And it's not only, and it will make it difficult to change your application or to change your database. For instance, in the beginning, we chose a free database, for instance, MySQL, and later our company grows and we want to switch to Oracle, or even we want to switch to cloud use from AWS or Azure or some other use. And I have to rewrite my application each time. Oh, this is, and also because the application now has become very complex. So each time when you are doing this, and it's going to cost a lot of time, people, and money. So this is people are gradually realized how difficult and how inconvenient this is. That's why they want to define something in common, which is an interface. And all the JDBC interface is used to connect the Java application and the corresponding and the different types of DBMS. And in the API, all the API are defined in two packages from Java. One is java.sql, the other is javax.sql. This actually depends on the Java version. In the current one, 10.11, I think there is only java.sql. You can check online by yourself to read the document. I think now the 10 and 11, it's just have this. But the Java 7, I think they also have the javax.sql. So when you really implement your own Java program, try to see and which Java version did you use, which the application, which version it has been developed for the details. Our common belief is that when I write a Java application and then I talk to the database directly, right? I want to insert a value, I want to query some results. Okay, I just directly connect to those DBMS. However, in practice, it was not. And in order to kind of separate or separate the Java application or the Java developers and also the different DBMS. So they have defined a series of API between them. So this is called JDBC. But in fact, from the DBMS, the companies, what they build, it's or what they provide are different JDBC drivers. Each different DBMS will provide a different driver. Actually, if you check the details about the two packages, you will find that in those two packages, java.sql and javax.sql, and there are more interfaces than classes. Why? It's because the JDBC or the Java definition, they only define the functions you should have from the DBMS. So they define the interfaces. But how to implement, they don't provide from the interfaces. But how to implement the classes are provided by the different companies. And they provide the different, the real implementation, Java implementation in their driver. Why they want to do this? I think maybe they don't want to be kicked out of the Java community. And so they are actually very active and in the Java application community as well. And each time when there is kind of update or on the Java version or on the new version of DBMS, they will update the driver correspondingly as well, of course, by discussions. And the JDBC, so actually we have seen that the JDBC has two directions or two connections. One is the Java application, the other is the database. So the JDBC has two layers. One is to orient the Java application, the other is to face the database. How JDBC is working? It follows a standard procedure. This procedure, it looks several steps. However, you can write them by yourself using your Java programming skills. You can define all of these by yourself. And this is what I want you to do in this exercise. So we'll introduce the procedure first. There are several steps how to implement how to realize the JDBC. First, we start the Java object or the program, and then in that class we should import the java.sql or javax.sql or both packages. You should import, and you should include, specify, and tell your Java application what specific DBMS driver it should include. Yeah, this can be also, there are many ways to specify this, and some you can use configuration files. You can also, from the beginning, you can write it directly in your Java code, but include the DBMS driver. And then next, how do we connect to the database? We need a connection. So first we should get an instance of the connection to the database. And then this is specially defined in the Java JDBC interfaces. It's named statement. We should create a statement instance. And then how do we really deal with the database, we used SQL, right? And so actually from Java, or how to implement directly in the database, still we have to use, or we have to execute the SQL sentence. So here we should specify the SQL sentence and send it to the database, and so the database can execute the SQL. And then we said the SQL, there are several operations, and they can insert values, and they can update, they can delete, and they can query. So select, right? Can you see the difference? Actually, when you select, we usually get some results, right? We were expecting some results. For instance, when I search for, in the library project, when I search for someone named, for instance, John, does it exist in the database? So I'm expecting the results to show me those users named John. So in that case, for select, and we use another interface named result set. But for all the others, for instance, if I want to insert, update, and delete, normally I don't have the result. So there is no result for update operations. In that case, I should close the statement. And when I get the results, and I should also close the statement first, and then I close the connection instance. And then this is the end. So this is a standard JDBC procedure for all types of Java applications, for all types of DBMS. It's the same procedure, but based on different Java versions, based on different DBMS, and the concrete, and based on your application, what do you want to what information do you ask for the database, and then you can implement your own logic into this procedure. This is a standard procedure. In this exercise for this week, we are going to implement that by ourselves. We write a small program to implement this process, and I'll explain later. But however, in practice, because both the connections and the database are precious resources, so in order that we can manage those connections, so in industry or in the real applications, there are many advanced or better technologies for the connections. For instance, if I have 1,000 users are connecting to my database at the same time, should I build 1,000 connections? And when do they close? What about if they forget to close their connection? Should I leave it for them? There are many strategies in practice how to use those connections. One famous technology is named connection pool, and this is specific, and there are frameworks to implement that as well. So connection pool, it's that I have many database connections maintained. They are just there, and so the connections can be reused when future requests to the database are required. For instance, the same users, they are frequently want to connect to the database, and if they are, but each time each time I close the connection, and then it will be difficult, especially when the database size is growing. Each time I close the connection, and then next time I rebuild and reconnect, and this is cost a lot of resources as well. So that's why we are using a connection pool. And it can also its aim is to enhance the performance of executing those SQL commands on the database to make it better performed. And especially for a dynamic database-driven website application. You should really cherish those connection resources and put some constraints, put some limitations to limit the behavior of the users. For instance, if we have hackers, what can happen? And they are sending requests so frequently and take all my connections. In that case, it will affect the other users' experience. So it's a very specific technology, or it's a very specific strategy or method to maintain the connection pool. Yeah, and then when the connection pooling can also cut down on the amount of time. For instance, if they forget to close the connection, and I can set up a timer to stop in 10 seconds, or it depends on the real application or requirement from your application. So this is a basic idea of using JDBC, and I will use another video to explain our exercise today.